Okay. Uh, so if you remember in the last session, we just created a simple sign up and login portal, and it was kind of and the user details are being stored in a like a pseudo database format in the data db.json file. Uh, that's a second. Yeah, so this was the page we created. If I go to login with correct, it will take me here. And if I go back and I put a wrong password, it will show me invalid credentials. Okay, so four things actually we'll cover today. One is the logout route. Oh, this when this button is clicked, the user should be logged out. Second one, we'll learn about storing cookies in the user's browser. Third is about hashing user passwords. I mean, any sensitive information. And fourth one is about authentication and authorization using Json Web Token. Okay. So first, we'll start off with simple logout. So I'll come to my index.js and come to the bottom of it. We app dot get request to slash logout. Request response function and rest dot redirect to the slash. Okay. So now if I go to over my home.html, this you can see there's an anchor tag in the navbar with one second. Join.
Hi, Kunal.
Hey Mayuk, we just got started. For now, well, I was just like going through what we did a while back. I mean, the last session, and I was telling what we'll cover today. So the four things that we'll cover today is creating a logout button or a logout route. Second one is learning about storing cookies in the user's browser. Third one is about hashing insensitive information, and the final one is about authorization using a JSON Web Token. So in the index.js, what I did is I created a get uh, get request on the logout route that will just simply redirect to the index file, to the default route slash. Okay. So if I come back here, request, take on logout, and it's taking me back. Okay, so that's working perfectly fine. If I put this on the side and go to db.json. Okay. So we saw the register route. So I'll just put another space file you done already. Space Sanjay, gmail.com and Sanjay. And I put register, it comes up, goes to my database, right? But if you see over here, the password and the email are exposed in my database. And if there were any attack, like any hack, suppose someone was trying to hack my way into my database, they can clearly steal the user password and do whatever they want with the user's information. So to avoid this, we have something called hashing. Uh, Now, what is hashing basically, right? Uh, Hashing, you could say it's like an just a second. So this is here. Hey, Udit,
Hey Kunal, how are you?
I'm doing great with it. So we just got started. Uh, I was showing how do we make a logout route, right? So you go to your index.js
Okay.
and you can just do a simple get request to the logout route using slash logout. And then we're just simply
Okay.
redirecting to the home. And in your home.html, we made a logout button. And then hashtag for that is just /logout. So if I come back over here and click on this, it will log me out, right?
Okay, I got you.
So
Yeah.
before we get to hashing, I want to say something. So if you go to your inspect, or here also, over here if you come, okay, in Chrome, this, come over here. I'm using the Firefox browser. I think it's storage and cookies. You can see the cookies that are there for your browser over here. So what we can do is we can create cookies in our server and send it as a response to the client's browser. So for doing that, we need a package called cookie parser. So I'll just come to my index.js and I'll open a new prompt and I'll do npm my cookie parser. Okay. Till this get installed, I'll come on the top. I'll put const cookie cookie parser is equal to require cookie parser. I think I got some problems. Yeah. But I'm using yarn over here, so you can you can do that as well. All right. Next, what I'm going to do is I can use it as a middleware. So app.use cookie parser and invoke it. Now, suppose say whenever my user logs in, I want to create a cookie that user is logged in. So if I go to my login route over here, the post request, right? What I can do is I can just put restore cookie, and you can see in the function it takes in two parameters. I mean, the main two which we have concerned with is the name of the cookie and the value of the cookie, both in string format. So I can just come over here and put the cookie, say currently logged in, and I'll put the other one as true. Else, suppose say when the user is logging out, I'll just put rest.cookie with the same name, and I'll put it as false. Okay, so if I go to my login and click on login to save it, I'll go to my cookies for this one, and you can see there's a cookie created with currently logged in, and its value as string true. So if I log out now and go to back to the cookies, its current value is false. Okay, the values are wrong. That's why I created two separate cookies. Refresh. Then, okay, so both are false right now. And, guys, I'll just be back in 2 minutes. Uh, I'll come back. Right. Sorry, I forgot to mention one thing before this. I didn't even discuss what a cookie is. Like how we saw local storage, and many of you have already used it in some of your projects. Uh, a cookie is nothing but like a small piece of information that is used by the server to there's multiple use cases. In our use case here is to identify the current logged in user, whereas in other cases you can it can also be used to store like a theme, you could say, like various websites have dark theme, like light theme can be used for that as well. Or in most cases you can see Facebook and Google, they have lots of cookies, right? So those cookies can be like your interaction with the website, like your behavior with the website are also stored in that and are sent back to the server. Yeah. So in our case we are using cookies to store the current user information. So if I to put this as the same name, then it will log in. I'll just copy this and paste. Okay, I'll come back over here, login, and now there'll be one cookie saying currently logged in as true. If I log out, go back to cookies, will say currently logged in as false, right? So I'm using the cookie parser library to create cookies in my server and send them to the browser using the rest.cookie method, which takes in two parameters, mainly two parameters. That is currently log name of the your current cookie and its value as a second parameter. The third one is basically something called options, right? What can this options be? So if I come to my browser, I can see here it has like a creator, domain, expires, host only, HTTP only. All these are options associated with that cookie. So I can set these options in my browser server. Suppose say I want this currently logged in to be true. Only for say uh, 1 day, right? So I can just put max age and then pass in a string 1 day. That's about it. So I'll go back to my login log. Or it should be a number. It takes in a millisecond. Okay, so I think 24 hours into 60 minutes per hour, 60 seconds each minute, and into thousands because in milliseconds I want it to be. Okay. If I come back here, currently logged in. Yep, it now you can see here it's showing 29th November and 11:54, like around the same time as I created this. So you with in the third parameter of the rest of cookie method, you can set in some options related to the cookie that you're going to use. So in our case, I just simply set a max age as 1 day. Don't forget to put it in numbers too, because otherwise it's not accepting it. All right, so this was the use of cookies. And yet, now we'll move on to hashing, right? Before that, you can see, as I mentioned, in our database, the password is exposed over here. So if anyone were to attack our server or our database, they have full access to user information. We don't want to store the password as plain text over here. So to uh, avoid this, we have certain mechanisms called hashing algorithms that basically take in the password in over here, or it can be anything that needs to be that is sensitive and needs to be stored in a safe format. So it takes in and it uses a you can go much deep into this, but you won't really be needing it. So there's like SHA-50, 512 and encryption, all these stuff, these algorithms that they take and they create a random, it's not exactly random, there's a small bit of pattern to it of how they create it. So they take these strings that we put and they generate a random string out of it. So suppose say over here, I'll go there. I'll just put a, you can see like it creates a random string. If I put Kunal over here, you can see it's again a random string. But now you might ask like, uh, won't some people just be able to figure out which algorithm is used and they can just, dehashes kind of thing. So that is where the concept of salting comes. Whenever you create a, I think better if I showed in a Jamboard. Whenever you hash a password, right? I'll just better if I explain it like this. Right. So whenever you hash a password, it creates a random string, let's say something like this. Your small password became a random string over here. Okay. And there are, and if you just leave it like this, somebody can just, the attackers through time, they can figure out what type of algorithm is used and go back and find your original password. So to avoid this, there's something called hashing. Uh, I mean, sorting, sorry. Sorting. So sorting is basically the process in which one random string that basically will be generated in your browser will be attached at the beginning of your hashed password over here. And then this as a whole is stored in the browser. Okay. I mean, in the database over here, your database. So first your password is taken, it is hashed into what for us would look like a random string. Then a salt is generated that is attached to the start of the hashed password. Usually there's a dot, and then that is stored attached to the hash, and this whole hash password is stored in your database. Uh, One thing to mention, this type of salt usually starts with some dollar to B to Y that basically mentions the version of salting used over here. So to hash your password, we'll use, uh, I'm using yarn over here. You can use, since we didn't switch like how to use yarn. Uh, you can do npmi decrypt ryptjs and then install it. I'm going to use yarn right now. Okay, I decrypt js add, right. Okay, then I'll go back to my index.js. Then const decrypt will require decrypt.js over here. Okay, so first thing first, when my user logs in, I want the user's password to be hashed and stored in the database. So I'll go to my, sorry, registers, right? So I'll go to my logger. I'll come back over to my db.json and I'll just delete it all. I'll just copy paste it for later use. Okay. I'll go to back to my index.js and I'll come to my register route. Okay. So in my register route, what I want to do is I'll we will say synchronous. I'll come down here. Okay, before the we do it inside the else block over here. Okay, I'll just put const hash password is equal to decrypt dot hash. Okay, that using a dot hash method, you can see it takes in two parameters. That is the password in format or whatever you want to hash in the form of string, and a salt. It can either be a number or a string, right? So, and it's mentioned it asynchronously generates a hash for the given string. So I have to put a await before it, and I'll pass in the password that I get from my server, and I'll just put salt as 10. Okay, so the more you increase this, the more encrypted your password is, but at the same time it takes more time to verify it or compare it when the user is trying to log in again. So ideally 10 is a good amount. It encrypts it in such a way that it is very tough to, I mean, I don't want to say encrypt because that is that's the term we'll look into another time. So it'll hash it in such a way that it will be really tough for anyone trying to go back and reverse the hash and find out the original password. Okay, so I'm not going to pass it. I'm just going to put console.log the password and the hashed password. Okay, and I'll come over here and I'll just register. Okay, and I'll put register. Okay, I'll go to the node and you can see what my password was and what it became, right? And as I mentioned, there will be usually a $2A2B something that specifies the uh, version of sorting used so that it knows how to uh, compare it later. So basically, when I'll come to that, so this is the whole hash password that is protected. So we want this one to be stored in a database. So I'll just, before pushing the user to my this one, I'll just do delete, or I'll just do user dot password is equal to hashed password. I'll come back here, remove this again, but okay. As you can, now it came. Now I've stored the hash password. So even if someone were to attack, they can't figure out what my user information is. But now when my user is logging in, I want a way to compare the password that they put to the password that is in my user database, right? So I'll go back to my index.js. I'll come to the login route and uh, right. So I'll come down here and I'll put const check user something is equal to, and then I'll just put bcrypt dot compare. And what does it take? It takes in a string that is that we get from the user and a hash, right? So the hash is what we get from the database. So the first argument is the password, the unhashed one that we get from the user, and the second one is the exists. I think the first one, if dot password. Okay, and I'll put this inside over here. I'll just put console.log check user. Okay. So what I'm doing first, if you remember this we are checking if the user is actually there in our database or not. So this was the old method, right? So what I can do is I can just actually I do need a user information. So we'll put it inside the greater than this one. So what we'll change is this one we'll put user does not exist if the length is 0, and then so I'll go back to logger. I'll go to login. Right, this won't uh, work because this AND statement doesn't match. So I'll just remove the AND over here. Login again. So now it's changed, right? And it's giving a prompt, right? Because this is a asynchronous method. I have to put await logout and async over here. And that it's returned me true because the password did match. I put in the same password, but now if I go back to login and I put in a random password, it's giving me false. So decrypt is taking care of where comparing the password that the user has given and the password that has been hashed. So I'll log out. And this works just the way I wanted to. So we don't need to put this over here. Okay, so now let's just create some random one. I mean, Sahil, gmail.com, Sahil, right? Go back to db.json and I'll put register. You can see there's another one created with the hashed password. And if you try and see the salt, the first part is the salt, right, that gets attached to the hash password. It's different. The only thing that stays constant in the first two is the version of the salt, whereas you can see the rest is generated at random and is specific and is unique to each user that is created. So this over here is your hash password, and to the start is the salt that was okay. I need to change anything. Salt that was attached to your hashed password. Now, next thing, you might have noticed that whenever you go to say Instagram.com in your browser or even Facebook, if you had logged in the past, you will directly be taken to your home page. You don't have to log in again. Whereas if you're coming for the first time, then it will prompt you to log in. And then suppose say within the same day you go back, you won't have to log in again. It just takes you back to the home. So if I log out over here, uh, in in cases where you're logged in, when you come over here, what we can do is we can put in a cookie in the browser. Suppose they're logging in the first time, it is stored in the browser. uh, so when you put in a login page request to the get request to this, along with that the cookies are also sent to the server. So we can, if the cookie exists and if the cookie is valid, then by default we can automatically redirect to the home page. So to do that, we have something called Json Web Token. So uh, before I get deep into it, we can do an npmi Json Web Token. You can run this command to install it. I'll be using yarn in this case. Okay, I might have installed the wrong one. I spelling is wrong. ASONWEB token. Yep, that's it. Okay, and to use it in my browser, in my server, I'll just put const JWT is equal to require JSON Web Token. Okay, so what exactly is a JSON Web Token? Right? So you can see in cookies, we are storing it in a form of string, right? Uh, we are limited by what it can act, things that we can store over here. And there are ways to access the local storage in your through the server, but we don't want to do that right now. So what we can do is we can take an object, we can basically kind of, you could say hashing, but in this case, we are going to call it signing over here. So I'll come back over here to the new one. Okay. So we have an object over here with some user information, right? This user information, what we want to do is we want to store it in the browser, but we want to store it in such a way that even if someone were to find it, they cannot, uh, you could say it's kind of like hashing, where we are turning into a random set of strings, okay? And this random set of strings, we are storing it in the browser, in the user browser. And suppose this is, say the user's log comes to the login page, right? So they put in a request for the slash login over here, a get request to the slash login. Whenever you put a get request or any request in general, all the browser information, that is the headers, in the headers you have the cookies. So whatever cookies I have in my browser is sent to the server, and in that server, so we put a request to the login page, right? So we get the login page, but before we even get the login page, In the server, what is happening is this is the login page, okay, in the server, and this is the server, right? In the server, it's checking, is there a cookie, right, that has some authentication kind of value to it. That authentication value, we check it in the server whether it's valid or not. If it is valid, then we'll just redirect to the home page. If there is no cookie or if it is not valid at all, we can just redirect them to the login page itself. So for doing all of this process, that is mainly the authentication path, uh, we have Json Web Token, or commonly known as JWT. In JWT, like hashing, it creates a random string. Okay, it creates random strings. So this random string has three parts to it. The first one is headers. Okay, usually called headers if I'm not wrong. The second one is called payload, and the third one is called your signature. I apologize for my bad handwriting. Okay, so let's just continue. So headers, right? So in headers, so we saw insult, right? Insulting, the first part over here, okay, the node over here mentioned the version of the salt. So similar way, the headers specified the version, the type of hashing that is used for your whole JWT over here. So it specifies information about this hashing. The second one is your payload. Payload is the information that we actually require. So in our case, it was that user information object, right? So that we'll convert into a random string, and that is your payload part. Third one is a signature. So basically, whenever a user logs in, we have to create a JSON Web Token, right? So we have to authenticate that this whole token is from our server. So we will be having like a secret key, also known as private key. We will use that to authenticate this token. That token will be signed, and that sign will be attached to the end of the JWT and sent to the browser. So whenever uh, you could say whenever a browser puts in a request to the server, this is the browser, and this is the server. Okay, so the browser puts in a request to the server in this case, and it sends a JWT along with a JSON Web Token along with it. So in the final part, the signature over here, what the server does is it compares the secret signature stored in its file structure and the signature in the JWT to verify if this was the same JWT that this server had signed initially. If this signature has been tampered with and it is compared later with the private key in your file structure, then it just rejects it then and there. Same way, when you're creating a JWT, so you respond, right? Respond to the browser with a JWT. When it will take in your payload, it will hash it. So certain hashing algorithms are used. What hashing algorithm is used is stored in the headers, and then it to verify that this is my JSON Web Token that is created in my server. I will just sign it, and then I will send it in a form of a cookie or a text or something to the browser. Any doubt about this one, guys? About hashing and sorting and signing as well? Any doubts? I know this is a bit complicated. I was lot confused in the first time as well. I'm still a bit confused sometimes. Any doubts about this hashing algorithm? I mean, you don't have to know how these hashing algorithms work. You just need to know that they are a secure way of sending information to across browsers to your server and even storing them in database. Any doubts so far? You can put in the chat box also, it's not an issue. Or am I audible? Okay, if there aren't any doubts, I'll just continue over here. Okay. Go to my. Okay, so to use this JWT, what I'm going to do is I will come to my login. So when the user is logging in, I want to create a JWT, right? So I'll come to my login. Okay, right. We didn't do this part fully yet. If check user, then login, else this dot send invalid credentials over here. Okay, so once the user is like properly checked, like they put in the right password, I want to create a say auth token. I'll use the jwt.sign method. So we'll look at this, right? What does it take? An object that is, I mean, a string or an object or a buffer object. So the first one is the payload. The second one is a secret or private key. Okay, and third one is the options that we don't really need to get into right now. So the two main things that we'll be requiring over here is like is a payload that can be a string or an object or a buffer, and the second one is your key, private key or a secret key to sign it with. So what I can basically do is I'll come over here. You can see the name is being stored, right? Name and password, right? So to uh, just a second. Okay. Fine. So I'll pass in an object on say user is equal to give the name as a request or okay, I can just put in the name directly. Name and then the password. I can just do an await decrypt. I want to store the okay, no, we don't want to store the password in the I'll just create a object with the user's name and I'll pass that inside my payload. And the second one should be a secret, right? So this secret I can just say come on top over here. Click on my secret equal to a random. I'll just go crazy with my keyboard. It's just random one. And I'll come back here and I'll just do a simple my secret. Okay. And before sending it, let's just see what it is. Console.log or token. Right? So you can see what might seem like a random string to us is not a random string to the algorithm. Right? So you can see there's two dots. That means there are three parts to this. The first one is the header part that specifies information associated with that token. Second one is your actual payload. That is the user information that we passed it. That is the name alone. And the third one is your uh, signature, that this is signed by my browser. So when I'm trying to come back in my login, so for that, what I have to do is I'll go to my slash log get route. I'll put const token is equal to request or cookies.jwt, or in our case, it's auth token, the name of the token, and I'll just put console.log token. Okay. before that, I want to send this one to the browser, right? So I'll just save it as auth token here as well. And the value for this will be the auth token that I created using the JSON sign method. I want this to maximum be there for 1 day, okay? And it should be HTTP Wali as 2. Okay. If I'm not wrong, HTTP means Wali for backend purposes. I'll have to look into that. I'll send you documents regarding this. Okay. So now instead of sending the current user logged in true or false, I'm just sending the auth token directly. So I'll just log out, log in. Or before that, we did a request or to get the cookies from the browser is sending cookies, right? So we are checking if there is a cookie named auth token. If there is no, so it's giving undefined. So I'll log in again. Okay, I'll go to my cookies. I'll go, you can see there's a cookie named auth token, and the same one is stored over here. Okay? Okay, so we don't need to console log this, and here as well. Okay, so I'm creating my cookie when the user is logging in for the first time, and I'm sending it to the browser. Now, when they come back to the login page, if there exists a token like this, what I can do is, I'm not wrong, there's a method called jwt.verify. Okay, so if token is there, if the token does exist, that means it's not undefined, then I'll do jwt. I'll use a verify method, which will take in the token. Okay, before doing this, we'll just see. Okay, which takes in the token, that is the whole string, and the key over here. And we can just read it over. Synchronously verify given token using a secret or a public key. This public key, we don't need to worry about much now. Okay. And what does it return for me, right? It returns the decoded token. The options for the returns the decoded token in our case. Okay, so the options for the verification returns the decoded token. What does that mean, right? So the third parameter of this jwt.verify is the options. So we can pass in a function over there. So to do that, uh, okay, so jwt pass in the token first, then it takes in the secret, and then third one is a function. Okay, is a function that returns the decoded token. It's a function that has two parameters, an error and a decoded token. Okay, and then if there's an error, then redirect. That means error in our case is basically the token does not match. So we'll just redirect to the login by default. Okay. Uh, and then this request dot user, we'll attach a user object or basically else rest dot send to send, sorry, not send, redirect to home if there is no error in our case. Okay. All right, so let's give it a try. I'll log out. I'll go to the login page. It took me to the home. Okay, and I can't send this twice. So I will need to put this over there. No need to worry about that now. Okay. All right. So I'll log out again. I'll come to my cookies. I'll come over here, and in my browser, I will come to this. I don't know if this allows me to do that. Okay, I can edit it directly over here. Okay, so this cookie, I'm just going to go to the signing part, and I'm just going to tamper with it. Okay, and I'll put in a request again, and I'll go to the login, and now it's giving me an error. Yeah, makes sense because I'm setting headers 2 times, right? So to avoid such cases, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function, or so to say a middleware. So uh, require authentication or auth in my this example that takes in the request, response, and a next parameter that we saw before. And then what we basically did over here, all of this, I'm going to do over here. Okay, okay, so okay, so what this middleware does is it takes in the token, the cookie from the browser. If the token exists, uh, then do all of this. Before that, we'll just put a return over here. And then if it does not exist, then send, I'll just copy paste. Then go back to the login page. I'll just come back here, copy this, and I'll paste it over here. Okay. Now, if the cookie does exist, then I'll call the JWT verify method to verify if my token is legit, that it is signed by my browser. If it is not signed, then redirect to the login page. If it is signed, then I want to go back, take the user to the home, allow the user to go to the home. Okay. And then basically, since it's a middleware, what we need to do is call in the next method. I'll just put a return next. Not wrong, I passed it. So where do I need to place my middleware, right? Since I'm using next over here, I can, where all do I need it? So I need it over here, my login route. Require auth. Okay. So that means whenever the user comes to the login page, page isn't going to accept cookies. Okay, yes. So because the cookie is tampered with, it's giving me an error. Let's go back to cookies. Server is redirecting because that will never complete. An error. That didn't. We'll just remove this and this. If error, then go back to home login. Okay. Cannot set headers after this. Then uh, Okay, I think it's this one. Okay, not yet. This view. Let's just think through what is happening. If the token does exist, that means return a decoded token. Uh, in that case, we don't want next to be happening. We want the user to go to the home page directly. So what we can do is if decoded token, then go to the home, else go to the next middleware or to the request response. Let's hope a in problem. I'm not fully sure where the error is happening. All right, I think I can just come over here as well, the slash login page. Over here, what we can do is if request dot, all right, we can just do this as well. Over here, if decoded the coordinate, we'll create a new object over here, request dot user is equal to the decoded token. We don't need to do all this. Okay. And this is not needed as well. Okay, so in our login dot, if the user object does exist, then response dot redirect to the home, else go back to the login page. And still the same error. I'm setting something over here. Slash out cookies. Okay, just stuck over there right now. Yeah, because there is no cookies over here. Yeah, if there is, okay, yeah, this is not fully done. So if there are no cookies, uh, then only I wanted to go to the login page. I don't need a return statement over here. Right, so if I put register login, right, so now it's not there. So if I log in over here, login, takes me to home, log out. I go back to the login page, takes me to the home. I log out, go to my cookies, it's still there. Cookie. Now, when the user logs out, right, I don't want this cookie to be there anymore. This auth token. So there is no way to delete a cookie directly. But what you can do is you can just come over here. You can reset the value of an already existing cookie. So auth token, and I'll just set to an empty string. So now I'll go back to here. It will take me to the home. You can see the auth token does have some value. I click on logout cookies. Now the auth token is just an empty string. Now where else will I require my authentication middleware other than the login route? Even when they come to the register page, maybe I can put it there as well if the user exists already, because that was our default route, the register page. Then even when they are coming in the home, I want them to be, I want to check if they are authenticated. That is, they have a JWT or not. And even when they are uh, logging out, I want to check if they are authenticated. And for wherever I put these middlewares, I have to even do if request.user. If it exists, uh, then just go to this send to the home. If it does not exist, then rest dot redirect to login. And the same thing over here as well. If request.user exists, then in this case it will be, sorry, it will be in else case. If it exists, then rest.redirect to the home. Else go to the register page itself. So this is a slash out. In the slash out, it showed it took me to the login by default. So click on it is still taking me to the login. That is because oh yeah, and because the JWT exists for one whole day, I don't want that. So I can just come over here, set in a max age of 0. Right? I'll come back here to log out, right? So what's that login? Log out to register. Okay, maybe just put in one. In auth token, if I go to, okay, we'll figure this out later, but you might be getting the idea of what we are doing with trying to authenticate who the current user is right now. That's it for today's session. Any doubts, anyone? I'll stop the recording right now.